Let's take up some of those issues with the Assistant Treasurer, Michael Sukkar, now, who joins us live from Canberra. Thanks for joining us, Michael. We'll come to childcare as a separate issue in a moment, but what do you make of this attack? We heard it from Anthony Albanese in question time today, that somehow the budget doesn't do enough for women. Is identity politics now got to be driven through the federal budget every year?
Oh, look, I think the Leader of the Opposition and the Shadow Treasurer have been flailing around today. They have obviously gone down that path. They've also quite bizarrely criticised the government for putting on effectively an emphasis on younger workers and getting them back into the workforce through our hiring credit, which really focuses on 16 to 35-year-olds. So I think they're struggling, and in the interim they've taken quite a strange path. I mean, as the PM said in question time today, I think it's quite belittling to suggest that women aren't as invested in the health of small and medium businesses and tax cuts and prosperity for the economy more broadly. Let's remember, over the last 6 to 8 months, the 8 out of 10 workers who work in the private sector have really copped the major brunt of the pandemic. And what we announced last night was a suite of measures to assist those businesses to invest, to commit to their workforces and to grow their workforces. And women are just as invested in that as men.
It seems to me that a lot of the critics, and it includes Labor now, are being very sexist in the way they frame this stuff. They look at the data and they say, I don't know, more women are in childcare or teaching and more men are in construction and more men have small businesses, and they say, therefore, it's sexist. Whereas if the measures themselves are gender blind, the whole idea is that women should be able to move into any sector of the economy they like.
Yeah, Chris, look, as I said, I think the opposition leader and Shadow Treasurer have put in a woeful effort today. They've been flailing around on these issues. I don't think there's any credibility that can be given to the claims that they've been making. They've made similar criticisms in my own portfolio, Chris, with respect to a range of measures, whether it's the Home Builder program or the expansion of the First Home Loan Deposit Scheme, and they get whacked down pretty quickly when Tradeswomen Australia, for example, come out and say, well, sure, we're a small part of the industry, but don't discount women as being an important part of the construction industry as well. So I think they are, I think they're really struggling, and quite bizarre criticisms today, quite frankly.
I think politically they're going to be on a winner with childcare, though. I think Anthony Albanese is flagging free childcare for a lot of Australians tomorrow night. Now, obviously, you're spending more money on childcare than ever before. There was a lot of free childcare rolled out temporarily during the pandemic. Don't you think politically this is a battle that's pretty much been lost? There's an expectation now on government just to massively increase childcare until it's available to all, probably certainly at modest income levels at no charge, no cost.
Well, look. The Leader of the Opposition doesn't need to do what a budget needs to do, and a budget needs to hang together, and it needs to provide a credible plan to get people back into work, and as I said, to enliven the area of the economy that's suffered the most, which is the private sector. And that's what our budget does. That's what the suite of measures we put in place last night, whether it's loss carryback, whether it's instant expensing of assets, whether it's tax cuts for 11 million Australians, it all hangs together. And I can understand an opposition that's struggling to find line and length in criticising the budget will try to pick the eyes of it, but the budget, it all hangs together. And, look, to the extent that the Leader of the Opposition throws a few morsels out here and there, it doesn't mean anything, obviously, being the opposition leader, and he's able to do that. But a budget has to provide a credible long-term plan to get the economy back on 2 feet. And that's what our budget does. That's what we'll deliver, and Australians have seen a track record of delivery in that respect.
I think one of the alarming things in the budget is just consolidating what's happening with immigration in this country. That is, it's effectively stopping for a couple of years, and that puts a big handbrake, of course, on our population growth. That's going to probably help housing affordability and the like, so maybe your measures in housing aren't that warranted. But shouldn't we be more innovative? Shouldn't we be looking to do more to try and maintain at least some decent level of immigration, bringing people through quarantine or testing? Why do we have to assume that we have to close off our borders completely?
Well, I think, Chris, it's always prudent and a hallmark, certainly when the Prime Minister was Treasurer and now with Josh Frydenberg as Treasurer, we are cautious in our assumptions. And the net overseas migration levels being where they're projected to be is not by design by the government. It's not a policy of the government. It's a consequence of the pandemic. And I think we have to be realistic about these things. Sure, there's a silver lining to every big dark cloud, and there will be, I'm sure, some great opportunities for first-home buyers, as there are as a result of decisions from this government with Home Builder or expanding the first home loan deposit scheme. But I think, Chris, it's better to err on the side of caution. I think the big mistake that we saw during the glory years of Rudd and Gillard was wildly optimistic assumptions, and to do that in relation to population growth as it relates to net overseas migration, I think wouldn't be right. So we're taking a cautious approach, but don't mistake that, Chris, for being a deliberate decision or design of the government. I think it's just an acceptance of what could happen and what is more likely than not to happen as a result of the pandemic, with the lack of free movement.
Maybe there's an opportunity there. Given the chaos in other parts of the world, maybe our good performance in controlling the pandemic allows us to bring in more immigrants with their skills and their investments. All they have to do is 2 weeks quarantine.
Well, again, Chris, but that's an assumption of the budget. It's not a policy design. So there's absolutely upside potential.
Indeed, let's get cracking on it.
Achieve that. Well,
I can knock up the ad campaign already. Get out of COVID-ridden Europe and North America. Bring your money to Australia.
Well, I think the National Cabinet will, I'm sure, heed some of the wishes of the Prime Minister over time, that with respect to quarantine arrangements and maximising the quarantine, which will then maximise the number of people that we're able to bring through, there are some constraints there that we are grappling with particular states around the country. So, look, it's an ongoing issue to deal with, and there is no doubt, Chris, upside potential, but we're very cautious in the assumptions that we place in the budget.
Michael, thanks for joining us.
Good on you, Chris. Thanks so much.
Assistant Treasurer Michael Sukkar there. Now we're going to take a break.